everybody, and welcome back. Today is NFC East Day. If you've been paying attention, we just did the Souths for both the AFC and NFC. Audio was a little wonky, a little loud, but we have fixed that here today. Hopefully, in the editing process, if this is not fixed, I might scream. But my dad Tony is here to talk some NFC East football. He's going to talk about his favorite team, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. So why don't you say hello to everybody?
I don't know if I want to say hello after that intro.
We are not the biggest Cowboys fans, but we do have some hope and optimism because there was some good stuff the Cowboys did actually do, but there's a lot of negative stuff of what happened with their whole offseason. But we're here to talk about the entire NFC East, not just the Cowboys. And we got to kick it off with the team who finished last. And that'd be the Washington Commanders. And a whole bunch of stuff happened in the offseason for the Commanders. Mainly brand new head coach Dan Quinn. They brought in new coordinators and everything. But you're really excited about this coaching staff, so I kind of want to give you the floor to talk about them.
So everybody that has listened to us before knows that I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. I am a Dan Quinn fan. And so when I was doing a deep dive into the Commanders coaching staff, Kingsbury, I'm not a huge fan, but maybe he's going to be better as a coordinator than a head coach. A lot of times that does happen. Joe Witt was with Dan Quinn last year, so there's a lot of familiarity there. But when you start going through the rest of their coaching staff, they picked up Larry Izzo. He's from Seattle, special teams. And then it's honestly, it's like a who's who of former players. Bobby Ingram, Sharif Floyd, William Gay, Brian Johnson, Ryan Kerrigan. Another former head coach, Anthony Lynn, Ken Norton Jr., who was, in Seattle. There's just a huge, there's a huge amount of experience, both playing and coaching on this staff. And let's hope that it helps Dan Quinn overcome some of the trials and tribulations that he had while he was in Atlanta.
Yeah, there's something I did notice with the coaching staff, and that is former player for Dan Quinn when he was at college, Sharif Floyd at the University of Florida, played under him when Dan Quinn was the defensive line coach there.
And Sharif Floyd played, he was a coach last year in Dallas as well.
Yes. Who did he last play for? Did he last play for Miami a couple years ago?
I believe so. I honestly couldn't tell you.
I remember he was drafted by the Vikings, and then just injuries kind of fizzled out his career. But the one thing is, you had always heard about him was he was a very intelligent guy. He knew what to do, right position, all that. Was a very study type person in the film room. So him transition to coaching, I think, will be smooth. Maybe he wants to return to the University of Florida. I wouldn't mind.
Well, like I said, remember he has been coaching already with Dan Quinn, so he does have some experience.
Joe Witt, who I believe is their DC, was the defensive passing game coordinator at Dallas last year. He did a lot of work with the DBs and all that. So all these interceptions you saw from Dallas, their DBs were a little bit over-aggressive for my liking. I think Green Bay took advantage of that in the playoffs. But he does have a track record of developing DBs. And when you have a couple young DBs and Emmanuel Forbes that you can work with, I think that's overall a good marriage to bring someone in who knows how to get guys to jump routes when that's what Forbes did great at Mississippi State.
I just think there's a lot of experience out there, and the players, former players, should be able to relate to the current players.
And you bring in Cliff Kingsbury, who does run a system, a very college-like system that will help Jaden Daniels transition to the NFL.
That's a plus as well, I guess.
But since we're already talking about the young guys, there was the big positive I took from the Washington Commanders offseason was they had an excellent draft. Now, Jaden Daniels wasn't my number 2 quarterback, but he does have talent. I have concerns about his body frame, how he's going to adjust to NFL, if he's going to get hit a lot, and overall, will his body hold up? I think that's a concern with a lot of quarterbacks, especially with how you saw Bryce Young handle some injuries last year. He kept on getting battered, and Bryce does not run as much as Jaden Daniels. I get Daniels is bigger, but he does not have a big frame.
We just had the same conversation with Anthony Richardson, and he's a much bigger guy. So playing smart is definitely something that these players coming from college into the NFL have to learn when to sacrifice and when not to.
Yes, and he is coming from a system that was very deep ball oriented. Guess what? You got Terry McLaurin here, who's a pretty good deep ball receiver. You have the guy they drafted from Penn State a couple years ago in Jahan Dotson. They have the talent to play deep, and if Jaden can be an average quarterback this year for them, just average for this season, it's a huge step forward for their franchise. Their second pick was Johnny Newton, who I loved at Illinois. I had a top 10 grade on him. I think he should have gone higher, but there was, I believe, a foot injury that had him fall in the draft. So the Commanders take a risk with a player with an injury, but if the talent is there, which it looks like it on film, it's a steal for the second round.
Yeah, you were much higher on him than I was. I was much higher on Murphy. So, it just preference. We'll see who actually comes out ahead. But yeah, in the second round, when there was a lot of buzz about him being first round talent, that's definitely good. The next pick in the second round, because they did have 2 second round picks, Sandstrill out of Michigan. I think he is the perfect DB for a Dan Quinn secondary.
And he does have the ability. I thought he was a really good press man corner for the University of Michigan. He stepped up. I think he can be that in Washington. And as I just highlighted, they brought the guy over that helped develop those DBs in Dallas, who are very aggressive, very handsy, very physical. That's probably what they're going to want out of Mike. Their other,
I don't think so.
Their other second round pick. Yes, they had 3 second round picks. Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. I was a big Ben Sinnott guy. I thought he was a good athlete, had good hands, can block. He is a good tight end, and when you have a quarterback who isn't the biggest frame, you're going to need these extra guys to kind of help block for him if you need to. Can be a nice, quick, dump-off, flat guy. Ben Sinnott can do that, and he showed the ability at Kansas State to make plays with the ball in his hand. They took another Kansas State guy, Brandon Coleman. I admittedly didn't watch a whole bunch of him. With what I saw is he's a developmental guy. He is not close to being a starter. Maybe he can eventually grow into one, but there is work to be done.
Brandon Coleman was TCU.
I had him listed as Kansas State, but the website had him listed as Kansas State. So if he's TCU, he's TCU. My bad. Purple uniforms, got confused. Maybe.
I get it. Luke McCaffrey in the third round. That's a pretty good wide receiver. They'll probably put him in the slot, quick outs. So if he does make the starting roster, it'll be pretty impressive to have another McCaffrey.
I mean, he was a third round pick. I think he's making the team, but starting is interesting. They don't really have a lot of depth at the receiver room outside of their top 2, so I could see them wanting to move with McCaffrey as their third option, as you said. And Daniels comes from a system that was very pass-heavy, so I wouldn't be shocked if they had a lot of 3-wide, 4-wide type looks for them this year. Jordan McGee from Temple, I admittedly didn't watch. I don't know if you watched much of him.
No, that I did not.
Dominique Hampton, the cornerback from Washington, he was fine. I don't really mind taking him in the 5th round, considering that I felt there was a giant drop-off at a certain point for prospects in this past draft. Hampton, another just guy you can maybe mold with, has some physicality, has some traits that you like, just not there as a player. Developmental pick, which you can expect for 5th round. Javonte Jean-Baptiste from Notre Dame. It's a 7th round pick. I don't have anything to add there.
No.
Do you have anything to add about this draft class as a whole?
No, I agree with you. I think it was a pretty solid draft class. I mean, you get what you hope is your franchise quarterback. You you strengthen your defensive interior line. You get more help on the outside. Last year, their secondary was a very, very big issue for them. So you get Sandstrel and, hope that his play style is going to fit right in. Sanat, I really liked him. I think because of his size, I honestly think that he's going to be right up the seam. I think that they'll use him to attack up the seam. Um, Even though I knew Brandon Coleman was TCU, he's developmental. I mean, that's just what it is. I don't think that if you're relying on him to start, even any point in time this season, I think you might be in a little bit of trouble. We already talked about McCaffrey. So I think all in all, it was a pretty strong draft class. I do think Dominic Hampton will be a very big special teams contributor to start off the season. And he does have some noteworthy. They played him more safety than cornerback. And so, when they try to go to those like 3 high looks, I think, he might make the field.
And that's very fair. This team, its strength is its weakness. They had a very good draft. It's a lot of young talent, but it's also young talent that's going to have to learn and grow in the NFL level. Young talent will get beat up. I'm not saying the Commanders are going to be great, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as last year because they had a really good draft to just kind of put a team out there that's competitive each and every week. They did not have that defensively last year. Their O-line was not good last year. Their quarterback play, Sam Howell, I don't blame him as much, but I think a lot of it left to be desired.
Well, coaching. I mean, coaching's huge. That's one of the things. You had a very, very young quarterback, and you made him, the single highest passer in the NFL, and he wasn't ready for it.
No. So let's move on to the New York Football Giants, who...
Did you want to talk about any of the other offseason acquisitions they made? Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner, Marcus Mariota to help back up Jaden Daniels?
Ooh, you're about to be unhappy with me. No, because I kind of view them as just veterans to help kind of nurture the team. I don't view Bobby Wagner as a plus player anymore. I think he's fine. That's it. Mariota is a backup quarterback. And Austin Eckler, I don't trust burst players that are 30 at the running back position.
Understandable. What you're trying to do is bring in culture, though. I think Austin Eckler is a great with his receiving ability out of the backfield. I really think that he'll help. Wagner, he still has juice in the tank. Is he as good as he once was? Absolutely not. But he knows this system and he can teach. They did bring in Frankie Louvu, and
underrated.
Highly underrated. So I think he's going to be awesome. Dante Fowler once again follows, Dan Quinn. They might be joined at the hip. Zach Ertz. At this point in time, you're like, is he ever going to go away? I mean, he's got to be older than me by now. So, but I think that they were strategic in the free agents that they went to pick up, that add value, didn't break the bank a lot, but they can help bring in the system that they want to bring in.
I'd have to check, but you mentioned Dante Fowler. I think Dan Quinn was a D-line coach that recruited him to the University of Florida. Because around the time.
You are correct.
It was around the time, I know that, and just, hey, Dan Quinn likes his Gators. Can't blame him for that.
On to the Giants.
Yeah. We can start this off by talking about a Gator killer and Malik Neighbors, but let's save that for the draft talk. To talk about the Giants, I think the big theme is that even though they had a good offseason, they brought in Brian Burns, they brought in some talent to surround Deion Jones. I just do not think this is a good roster. I think there are holes in the secondary, in the linebacking room. Their D-line's pretty good. Their offensive line is questionable. Their receiving room is still questionable, and they've lost their best player in Saquon Barkley.
I would agree with everything that you said. I'm just not a fan of this. They made a catastrophic move as far as I'm concerned last year with the extension. If you remember, and if anybody wants to go back and listen to our 2023 tape, we basically said that the Giants were a fluke to make the playoffs the year before, and that they were going to finish bottom of the division. Well, we were wrong on that because the Commanders ended up finishing bottom of the division. But, the Giants weren't anything to be proud of.
The highlight of their season was a practice squad named Tommy DeVito. And even though, hey, respect the Italian brother, if that's your season highlights, it's a very bad season. The positive is, though, they did bring in Brian Burns, someone we were both really high when he was coming out of the draft. We were waiting for him to pop in Carolina. Do you think he pops in New York, having a Dexter Lawrence interior rusher to kind of help him not get as much attention now?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, if you look on their edges, I think they're going to be able to cycle edges through, keep them fresh. Uh, I really like what their defensive line is going to be able to do. Dexter Lawrence is, he's a beast, and we all know that. But with some of the other players on the defensive line, I just think that in the long run, their defensive line is going to be a lot better. Is their secondary going to be able to hold up? We don't know. They had some issues last year. They did bring in Isaiah McKenzie and Xavier McKinney, but I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to help that secondary.
I don't think this team's all that talented. I believe that trading for Brian Burns, even though I like him as a player, I think it was a mistake because they should not be giving up high draft picks for players right now, because this team needs to stockpile the picks and they need to rebuild. They need to build this team up. I truly believe with how the Giants offseason unfolded, the worst thing that happened for them was making the playoffs when they did, because now ownership thinks they can get back there immediately, and it's just not a team good enough for it. They pulled a rabbit out of their hat year one, and that rabbit went back in the hat, and I don't think you're going to be able to pull them out again now that the secret's been revealed.
Well, I think that they're at the point right now where they realize where they're at, and they're building the team around so that, within the next year or so, they're going to get a different quarterback, right? I mean, there's even been talk in the offseason that they may target Dak, right, after this year. So I think that right now they're just trying to bring in pieces to solidify their team around a quarterback if they're going to have to draft or if they're going to pick up in free agency. On the side note, did you know that this is their 100th season?
I guess that would make sense.
So, yeah. In fact, August 1st, so in 2 days, will be their 100th birthday or anniversary, whichever one you want to call it.
Wow, that's old. I think it's time to move on to the draft because there's stuff to talk about, but I think we have to get it out of the way first. We got to rip the Band-Aid off Malik Neighbors. And before you go, because you're going to talk about him in a different light than I will, I kind of regret of how I ranked Malik Neighbors in the draft process. I had him as a top 10 player. I thought he was really good. I thought he could be a true one. The more I went back and rewatched it, I just kind of felt like he'll always be a number 2, which being a number 2 is not bad. You can have a very long NFL career for it. I'm not saying he's going to bust out, but I am going to tell Giants fans, let's lower our expectations on Malik Neighbors because he's not going to be this high-profile, elite guy like a Marvin Harrison Jr. and a Rome Odunze. I know some people have been saying that. When I go back and I watch the film against teams that had a good secondary versus teams who had a bad secondary, it was noticeable of what teams Malik Neighbors roasted and what teams he did not.
He's not good against press. So, I mean, you think about what Dallas does. You think about what some of the other teams. Look at what the Eagles did this year for their, defensive coordinator. You don't think that they're going to be up in his face. I honestly, and I said this the other day, I think he was the second best receiver on the team. And guess what? I mean, he made it work. He was drafted where he was. And we always preface our opinions by saying that, we hope we're wrong. We hope he has a great career, right? But our feelings are that he is not that true number one that the Giants were looking for.
And also, I don't think it's fair to expect him to have a great rookie year because his play style does not go good with their quarterback they have right now.
Well, their quarterback, it just isn't good. Okay. Well, I mean, let's put that into context as well.
Yes, but I'm also trying to put preference on the New York media market, the New York fan base, who are prone to overreact. I'm saying don't this year. He's not going to be a 1. He's going to be a good 2. There are plenty of good 2s who have great careers in the NFL. Anquan Boldin is one of the best receivers I have seen as a number 2. He might go in the Hall of Fame as a number 2 option. That's just how it is.
He was a stud.
Yes. Now time to move on to their second-round pick, and I do not want to be negative about their draft, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut on this pick. You talked about Tyler Nubbin, who you liked a whole lot more than I did.
Oh, yeah. No. Hard hitter, is instinctual. I think it's a good pick. And remember, I prefaced earlier by saying that their secondary was going to need some help. And I think Tyler Nubbin is going to help that secondary out a lot. He's very cerebral. And, I mean, that's just something that is definitely needed. I like that pick. That's honestly, by looking at it, that's my favorite pick in their draft.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to be too negative about someone's future. Drew Phillips was their third-round pick out of Kentucky. He was fine to me. I didn't feel like he was a day 2 pick personally, but third round, I'm not going to crucify them for picking him.
Theo Johnson, Penn State.
I loved him.
Well, in the fourth round, he's a solid get in the fourth round,
I had a second-round grade on Theo Johnson, personally. I really loved him. I thought he was a great athlete. Tremendous body. He's got a huge frame. He's got great length. This dude has the ability to become an elite receiver. And as I'm saying, his frame, at the time of this draft and all this is his draft measurements, he was 6'6", 259. That's a big boy. That's an NFL body right there.
That's a big boy. What was his 40 time?
I cannot remember off the top of my head, but luckily I have it written down in my notes. 4.57, which graded on a 9.57 on RAS. His total grade on RAS was 9.93.
That's pretty darn good.
He's an insane athlete. He is well worth the fourth-round pick. Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue. Fun fact, he was actually an Iowa wide receiver turned running back at Purdue. He's a good athlete. I just think he's raw at the running back position. I never felt like he picked up blocks well, which I think can be expected for a wide receiver turned running back. There's just stuff there to learn from him. I think he's got talent. He could possibly become their lead back in a couple seasons.
Also, with a player that has both receiving, wide receiver skills and running back skills, with the way the new kickoff, that could be interesting. He might be somebody to watch there.
And to note, because we just mentioned Theo Johnson's RAS, Tyrone Tracy's RAS was 9.78. Athletes.
Yeah.
Darius Masu, I didn't watch, to be completely honest. I don't know if you did.
No, not really.
Off with the Philadelphia Eagles. They had some good stuff in the offseason, and we're going to talk about that. But the big question for them is, how do you replace Kelsey? Not only on the line, but as a leader in that locker room. Because I don't think there was a question. He was probably the number one voice in that locker room.
I would say that he had to be, top 1 or 2. I mean, his longevity and his career spoke for themselves.
Maybe one of the most athletic centers I've ever seen, with how fast he would run downfield, pop someone, and then go back in the huddle and do it again. Insanely athletic for a center. And you look at this Eagles, they did draft to try and prepare for it. They took Cam Jurgens a couple years ago, someone you're much higher on than me personally. I wasn't his biggest fan. The Eagles do have a very good O-line coach, so if they can work with him and get him up to speed, maybe he will work out.
It'll be interesting to see. I think that Jurgens is a little bit different style. I'm wondering if they're not going to try and create more of a, like an outside run game as opposed to right up the middle, with the beef that they had and the power that they had.
Well, Kellen Moore kind of did run a bit more outside-based schemes with the Chargers last year, so it wouldn't shock me if that was their plan moving forward.
It'll be interesting to see.
Speaking of just overall changes, they got rid of their coordinators and they brought in Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore was someone last year at this time we all thought he was going to be a head coach this upcoming season. Stuff did not go well in LA, to say the very least. And Vic Fangio, pretty much being the guy blamed for the Dolphins' collapse, as is tradition, blamed the DC in Miami.
Well, I think that it's not just blame him. I mean, we have to look at the fact that they were falling apart at the seams last year. There's only so much that you can do. And also, you're never going to have a complete Vic Fangio defense, initially after the first year, right? It takes a little while to get in there so that everybody understands, because from everything that what I've heard, it's pretty complex. And so to just say, oh, no, this isn't going to work and we're going to jettison you, I don't think that was the wisest choice. I am a Fangio fan. But, I mean, Philly's once again picking up somebody else's scraps and they'll probably make it work, right?
Well,
That's
also, he was kind of a consultant role with Gannon in Philadelphia. He was consulting a lot with this defense, so it's not like he doesn't know some of these players already. He knows some of these players. They know how to run his defense to an extent. It's not like they're starting from scratch. A lot of these guys know it. They can help some of the younger players in there, can help some of the new guys in there. The Eagles' defense is going to be better this year, which should terrify everybody, because if their defense was average last year, they're probably back in the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, they had an influx of talent in the offseason as well. So,
do you just want to go to the draft? Because that's really what I want to talk about, is their top 2 defensive picks.
Absolutely.
Keontae Mitchell, how the hell did he last the 22nd pick in the draft?
I don't know, but I thought Kenyon Mitchell was the guy that got drafted by the...
Oh, my bad. Kenyon Mitchell. Good, just as good. I don't get how he fell. This is a guy that has all the tools you want in an NFL corner. Was it because he played in the MAC? Guess what? He was great against everybody.
So I think this is just the product of, 5 million quarterbacks going and 5 million, offensive tackles going and a couple of interior defensive linemen going. Oh, and by the way, we're gonna in the first round draft a ton of wide receivers as well, and it just pushed everybody else down this year. And I don't get it. I would much rather take a defensive back than a wide receiver. But I guess that's just me.
Well, I get taking a wide receiver when it's Marv, Odunze, even the Jaguar situation who desperately needed a wide receiver. But some of these teams that passed on him, I still don't get why the Raiders passed on him. And we'll talk about the Raiders draft when we get to the AFC West. Mitchell is a perfect fit there, but he falls to Philadelphia, and this is such a Howie pick. Just letting everyone make their mistakes, letting the guy fall in his lap, saying, thank you very much. And oh yeah, he did that in the second round pick in Cooper DeJean.
Yeah.
What a load of bull this draft was for the Eagles. Eagles fans should be pumping out their chest. It doesn't matter who you pick for the rest of the draft. You got the 2 best DBs in this draft. I don't know how, but they did.
Because teams were prioritizing other players, right? I mean, that's honestly, that's what it is. And I mean, Mitchell more so falling down that far, as high as I was on Cooper DeJean, I'm just wondering if people were leery about where they could play him. You know, his size doesn't lend him to be on the line. So is he going to be a cornerback or is he going to be a safety? And personally, I think he plays better at safety, but is that going to be where he's best suited, right? So I think I don't think teams knew what to do with him, to be honest.
Do you mean Mitchell or DeJean there? Because you're talking safety, and I personally think DeJean's their safety.
DeJean, that's what I said. I was talking about DeJean. Sorry.
That's completely fine. I don't get that argument strictly because he is such a great athlete. In the NFL, you need great athletes. And there were guys picked who were very not great athletes who tested kind of poorly who were drafted above him. And we'll get to a certain team that I'm looking forward to when we get to them to talk about their draft. Cough, cough, Arizona. I look at how the Eagles got these guys. It's the same thing on repeat every year. Howie just waits for the star players to fall in the lap. Thank you. I'll take a Jalen Carter. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, it warms my heart. Every time he does it, it infuriates me that my team can't get this lucky.
Can't or just doesn't?
I don't think I should complain considering who my team drafted in the first round.
Yeah, I'd say that you did okay there as well. Let's go on to some of the other players though, so we can keep this going. I was not super familiar with Jalix Hunt. So do you know much about him?
I tried to watch him, and truthfully, I only found a couple YouTube stuff when I was trying to dig up anything I could. Of course, the Eagles have more resources than I do to find it. With what I saw, he looked like an NFL player. I just couldn't tell where he went or all that. I trust the Eagles' evaluation of linebackers, especially edges. They tend to do a pretty good job with that. And if they're going to put a stamp on him, far be it for me to argue. Will Shipley was someone I liked a bunch. I felt like he kind of got the shaft in Clemson this past year. Clemson as a whole was just... It was a train wreck, to say the least, with how I felt a lot of their players were put into position. He's great out of the backfield, has some good burst, won't be required to be a number one, which I don't think he would be in the NFL, specifically because the Eagles brought in Saquon Barkley. It's just, I feel like Shipley is a good pick, but their other pick is someone who I loved and I thought would move to running back. Makes me wonder if he's not gonna now because they have a deep running back room, Anais Smith. He was someone I had pegged as a guy who I would want to move to running back and I think could really pop. I think this could be a guy you see in the return game for them. As we've been talking about all these new rule changes, I think Anais Smith would benefit deeply from being the return man on some of these teams.
Then picking up Jeremiah Trotter, he's going to give him that thumper that they really haven't had.
I believe at the time we're recording this, he did suffer an injury in training camp.
Oh, did he?
I believe I saw something on that he was hurt. I can't confirm 100%, but it caught my eye in passing.
Well, that's a bummer because they also brought in free agency just to pick on the linebacker. So linebacker was definitely an issue for them last year, and they brought in Zach Bond as well. So
And they did bring in, I'm blanking off the name off the top of my head as I'm looking.
Devin White,
Devin White, who
but they brought him in. So
I want to talk about one last pick in the draft, though. That's who I was referencing.
okay. No, I apologize.
Johnny Wilson. Now, I think Johnny Wilson has some talent, but he had this issue called not being the most reliable guy catching the football. And by the way, real quick, I looked it up. Apparently, he was not hurt. So it was something I saw him pass, and that was not true.
Okay. Alrighty.
Just correction before Eagles fans get on it. I saw it. Correction. My bad. But Johnny Wilson, he is 6'6", wide receiver. F it. It's the 6th round. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's the thing, and I've seen some people talk about moving him to tight end. I don't move him to tight end. You keep him as a wide receiver, and you see if you can develop him. Because how many tight ends are 6'6"? That does not give you an advantage. If you put a 6'6" guy on a 5'10" corner, throw the jump ball. Throw it. And you do have Dylan McMahon and Trevor Keegan as other picks. I truthfully didn't watch a whole bunch of them, but they come from Michigan and NC State, both teams that have developed offensive linemen pretty good, so I can't blame them for dipping their toes in that water.
Definitely. To go on to the free agents to help patch up, some of their draft, they brought back Avonte Maddox. They cut him last year to save some money, and oops, saving money cost us, a deeper run into the playoffs. They traded for your boy Kenny Pickett. They brought in Devin White. Chauncey Gardner is back. Saquon. That is huge. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know how well their offense is going to run with Kellen Moore. When we talked last year, I had mentioned that I really thought that losing, their OC and their DC really was going to hurt them, and it ended up hurting them a lot. And so I'm not as big a Kellen Moore fan as you are, so I don't know how that's going to work. But good Lord, Saquon Barkley and in that backfield, it's it's insane. I thought last year they were going to do really well with Swift, and so what do? You go out and get somebody better. So and the fact that you're taking it from in your division, they see him, they know what he does. I think it's great.
So you know how I am about paying running backs. I am not for it. Saquon, I get it. I am not a fan of his contract. I'm saying this now. I would not have given him it. That being said, the Eagles are clearly showing they're going all in for a Super Bowl, and I can't blame them bringing Saquon Barkley for that. Will that contract age good? Probably not. If you get a Super Bowl out of it, do you really care? No, not really. And that's what Saquon brings you. He brings you another element you haven't really had in Philadelphia. They have had running back by committee. Now they have running back. And even though I do think they brought in Will Shipley and maybe Anais Smith will move to running back, like I think he should, you're not going to take Saquon off the field all that much. And when he does need a breather and all that, and you don't want to run him into the ground due to his prior knee injury, it's just Saquon makes them better. Long run, I don't think it's going to work out, but if you can get one Super Bowl in the short run, all worth it in the end.
So I was looking on his contract. Basically, I mean,
it's a 2-year deal.
Yeah, because there's a void year in 27. It's not as bad as I originally thought.
No, if you can get out of it in the second year, all for it. It's just my concern is you're paying AJ Brown a lot of money. You're paying Jalen Hurts a lot of money. You're going to have to pay Devontae Smith a lot of money. You're going to have to pay a bunch of your defenders a lot of money. You lost to
Didn't they? Didn't they just re-sign Devontae this year too?
I don't remember exactly. I don't think he
Yeah.
has.
No, I'm pretty sure. Well, while you're going through this, I'll check real quick.
You're going to have to pay these guys money. And that's what just worries me about paying a running back is that the money pool is going to dry up really quick and you're going to lose some of these guys at harder to replace positions. Not saying Saquon's not an amazing talent. He just plays a position that you can get production out of later in the draft than, say, defensive tackle or edge or cornerback, as we've seen.
3-year extension worth $75 million.
Okay, he did sign. Side note, he's going to get a lot of money in 3 years.
Yes.
I don't have anything else to add on the Eagles. I think we talk about them a lot. Mostly positives. Like, this is a good effing football team.
I really think this team is going to go as far as the coaches let them go.
I do have a question. If this team is one and done in the playoffs, does Nick Sirianni come back next year?
I don't think so.
That's very interesting.
There was a lot of talk even after their Super Bowl that people were surprised he didn't get let go, which, I mean, I'm more of a fan of the OCs there than him, but I mean, he was the coach in the Super Bowl. Would you get rid of him? No, but last year there were just a lot of misses. And so I was kind of wondering what was going to happen, but he was able to jettison his offensive and defensive coordinator and, bring in new. Their defense, I think, will be a lot better this year just because I do like Fangio, but it's going to be interesting. Their team is stacked. They have one of the best rosters in the NFL. And so if they don't do something with it, he should be.
I think the biggest issue with Nick Sirianni is the fact he wears his heart on the sleeve. Like, he is not someone that's going to sugarcoat it. He's going to tell you his feelings. He's going to tell you his expression. That's just the type of guy he is. And I think if you are on a losing streak like they were to end the season, if you fail, his rah-rah, nonstop, just says whatever he wants, it wears on you pretty quickly. That's just how human beings react to those type of personalities. But now it's time to move on, and Eagles fans may like this segment. We're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys offseason. Do we need to get Jerry Jones a dictionary to describe what all in means?
You know what? He might have just meant that, they were all in. If they didn't win it this year, they were cleaning house, which is what you think is going to happen, right? So maybe it's just terminology, what he was thinking, as opposed to, how we interpreted it.
I'm sure Dallas fans love this offseason. I'm sure they handled those words great. To be honest, there's not really much to talk about their offseason. They lost Tyron Smith, an aging tackle. They really didn't bring anybody. I saw Sam Williamson tore his ACL. He's out for the year. They lost.
Vander Esch retired and Gallup was cut.
They lost Dan Quinn. They brought in Mike Zimmer. And here's a separate question. Have you ever seen a coordinator hired on a 1-year contract?
No. Not that I know of.
Like, that's just weird. It has this feeling of, if this doesn't work, Jerry is going full Jerry. And I kind of wanted to save my theory on what direction they're going to have at coach next year, but I might as well just go with now. I think there's going to be a rumor to pop up mid-season that Deion Sanders wants to come coach the Cowboys. I don't think he's going to be the guy. I fully expect that rumor to pop up that him and Shador want to team up in Dallas. The direction I do see Dallas going is Dabo Swinney from Clemson. And the reason why I think this makes sense is Dabo, he's not evolving with college football. He's kind of sticking into how he built his teams at Clemson, who won national championships. Just recruit. Develop the talent. He's not looking at the transfer portal. He's not really looking at that. That's kind of more of an NFL mindset to me. And you look at Dallas, Jerry Jones likes to go big game hunting. He has the coaches he's won his Super Bowls with have come from college football. So I just think it makes sense on paper. Clemson might need to go in a different direction if this season doesn't work out, and Dabo's refusal to evolve hurts them. And Dallas has 1-year contract for Mike McCarthy, 1 year for Mike Zimmer, 1-year contract on Dak Prescott. I don't know how many years CeeDee Lamb has, but he wants a new contract. How long until Micah Parsons is asking for a new contract?
Well, CeeDee Lamb has to get done this year. Micah has to get done next year.
Yes, and it kind of feels like Dallas is in this weird zone of they feel like they should be better than what they are. And maybe it's because that playoff game that they lost did so much damage to our last memory of that team. That it's like we're lower on them than maybe we should be.
Well, I mean, the shock value. You're absolutely right. They had an exceptional season last year. And for whatever happened, Green Bay came in and just put a hurting on them. I mean, there's no ifs, no ands, no buts about it. Green Bay, got hot at the right time. Look what Green Bay did. I mean, they almost beat San Francisco as well, right? So sometimes that happens. Sometimes teams get hot at the right time and they have all the answers and, they go further than what everybody thinks that they should, right? We see it all the time in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So this could have been, we saw it the year before with the Giants. We've already talked about that, right? They had no business being really in the playoffs, and yet they advanced, and then they ran into a buzzsaw. So wasn't Dallas's day. There's that old adage, any given Sunday. Well, that was not their day. And I don't know if it was on a Sunday or a Saturday or what, but I can't remember. But
it was a Fox primetime game, so it was on Sunday. I remember that.
Okay, well, there you go. So,
but I don't want to be so negative on this Cowboys because Dak is still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. Their running back room is not good. Their line is fine. It's very young. They drafted a guy who we'll talk about here in a second. Their receiving room, it's got talent. Their defense has Micah Parsons. Like, the talent is there. It almost feels like there's this mental block for people, maybe for even the Cowboys when it comes to the playoffs, but for people with how we talk about them, it's just we can't get that Green Bay game out of our head.
Well, but is it that we can't? Dallas has moved on from it, right? So maybe we need to move on. Those last year, we're talking this year, right?
That's what I'm trying to say, though. Is us as fans who watch football, we just can't get that image out of our head. Well, Dallas has moved on. They figured out what pieces need to go to improve, what draft picks need to be made. We're still stuck on that game.
And that's very fair. Like I said, going into it, I think it's done last year. They addressed issues that they have for the offensive line to even replace losses that they had. Did you see Sam Williams tore his ACL on Sunday?
I already mentioned that.
Oh, wow. Sorry. Missed that.
No problem. I don't know how to talk about Dallas because, like I said, they just feel like a team that should be better. But let's move on to the draft. And they start out their draft trading back with the Detroit Lions, then taking Tyler Guyton of Oklahoma. This was a guy I really liked. I thought he was a possibility for the Steelers at pick 20. I am semi-intrigued by this because Dallas has had a plan for their offensive line. Whatever guy is working with Duke Manyweather, draft him. Duke will get him right. And it's worked out for them so far. Maybe it'll continue to work out.
Yeah, they definitely needed help on the offensive line. And that's a big boy.
Very big.
So, I think it was a good pick. And then Marshawn Nealand, uh, I was very, very intrigued that he was getting as much draft buzz as he was. And so I probably watched more of his tape than quite a few other edges in this draft just because I wanted to see what I didn't see the first time I watched him live. And he definitely has pop. And he's got an NFL body. It's going to be nice to see what Zimmer can do with him. I think that he can be a very, very nice piece of their rotation.
He reminded me a lot of Everson Griffin with how Mike Zimmer used Griffin for many years in Minnesota.
That, that's actually pretty good. That's a pretty good analogy.
Yep. Cooper Beebe, the guard from Kansas State, actually from Kansas State. Uh, he was good. I don't think he was great, but also I don't really feel like Kansas State's offensive line had a lot to work with, considering the quarterback play wasn't the best. It was fine. Oh wait, it wasn't even Adrian Martinez. It was the guy who's now at Ohio State, who I'm blanking on, Sam Howard, I think is his name. It felt like there were pieces missing Kansas State, so it's hard for me to address Cooper Beebe because I felt like the quarterback there held the ball too long. The running plays are kind of predictable. It felt like their O-line wasn't put in the best position to succeed. Marist Liufau from Notre Dame. I didn't watch a whole bunch on him. I thought he was an NFL body, will probably get drafted by somebody to work with an experienced linebacker coach to try and get more out of him. Kalen Carson, cornerback out of Wake Forest. He wasn't someone I was all that high on. I felt like he was interesting as a UDFA. I don't know if I would have taken him, but bringing him in a weaker back half of the draft, I can't blame them. Ryan Flourney, I did not watch, from Southeast Missouri State. I didn't even know of him, to be honest, completely in the draft process. When he was picked, I had no notes on him. I had nothing. Nathan Thomas, the offense tackle from Louisiana Lafayette. Louisiana has put guys in the NFL, but since they have lost Billy Napier and a couple of the line coaches there, their offensive line has not been as good. So this is a very interesting pick for me to see how he kind of goes from Louisiana to the NFL, because we've seen it work with Robert Hunt, a guy that went to the Jets whose name I'm blanking on. They have had success from that. NFL teams have had success going to that program and taking offensive linemen recently. And
You're taking a seventh round flyer on him, so he'll probably end up on the practice squad where you can develop him. So it's more along the lines of what physical tools does he have, and they'll go from there.
Justin Rogers from Auburn. I didn't watch a whole bunch of Auburn. The one game I really watched a decent bit of because I was curious was New Mexico State, and the best left unsaid about that for anything Auburn related is probably the best. Do you have anything to add about them, or do you want to move on?
No, I think we can move on. Yeah, it's going to be interesting this year to see. They didn't restock a lot, but they were a darn good team last year. So as long as the offensive line pieces that they brought in can fill what they've lost, and they can appease their superstars.
Yeah, it just Dallas is so weird because, like I keep on saying, they feel like they should be better, but you just feel more negative on them as a whole of a team.
But I mean, look at how many games they won last year. So I mean, they were they won the division, right? So they just had a bad game.
Yep. Time to move on to rookies to watch. Offensively, the guy I had, no surprise, Jaden Daniels. I thought about trying to go a couple other guys here. I couldn't make a good case for it because at the end of the day, the second overall pick that's a quarterback is going to be the more guy to watch. Probably the guy who's going to put up a lot more numbers. He's going to have most opportunities to put up numbers and probably be the one people talk about the most.
I'd agree.
My defensive rookie to watch, and I debate between two players here. They both happen to be from the same team. But I went Cooper DeJean because I feel like he's going to be that roaming safety that's going to get some turnovers, going to get some big-time plays, and just overall give them that splash that they needed. They did not have a lot of back-end turnovers from their safeties last year. They weren't coming up making those plays. That's all Cooper DeJean did at Iowa, was make big plays, get to the ball, track it in the air, make the play.
So it's funny because I was tracking that way. I was actually going to do a coin flip between Mitchell and DeJean, but I'm going to go Marshawn Nealand.
The Everson Griffin comp got you excited, didn't it?
Well, no. What got me, I don't know, excited? He's going to be playing opposite of,
Micah.
Micah, and with Sam Williams going out, he's going to have a lot of playing time, right? So I think that he's going to get, he's going to get help with the benefit of people running away from Micah Parsons, and they're going to be running right into him.
Okay.
I can see him having 8 or 9 sacks this year.
And that'd be a very good development for them as for a rookie.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of just talking about this player already, defensive MVP for me is Micah Parsons. I tried making a case for anybody else. I tried looking at Lawrence from the Giants. I was like, no. I looked at a couple of Eagles. I'm like, hey, maybe Jalen Carter. I can't put him there yet until he does it. I tried to be different just for some fun, but at the end of the day, I couldn't come up with a different guy than Micah Parsons.
When you have a player in your division that is in the mix for defensive player of the year throughout the whole NFL, it's kind of a no-brainer.
I think there's only one division we're going to have a full argument about on, possibly. Stay tuned. Offense MVP, I'm actually going to let you go first on this one.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I'm actually going to go Saquon Barkley.
Damn it!
I think him behind an offensive line that he has never had before, they're going to utilize him. The only thing that might bite me in the ass on this is the fact that Kellen Moore isn't huge in the run game, right? So I'm hoping that running and then passing, because he did like to pass to Pollard. I'm really hoping that proves that Saquon's going to be the guy.
I am so mad because I did not think you were going to take Saquon. I thought you were going to take A.J. Brown, and I was going to take Saquon Barkley, and I was going to look like a genius at the end of the day.
I love me some A.J. Brown. Look at Philly's offensive weapons.
You can choose any of them and be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
I could give you a reason for Devonta Smith, for A.J. Brown, for even Dallas Goedert. Jalen Hurts as well. If you want to go quarterback, go with the easy pick. I'm also taking Saquon. He has not had an offensive line this good his entire career. I don't even think he had an offensive line this dominant at Penn State, where he killed teams. He is good in space. If he has blocks, he's going to just run down people's throats. He's good at the passing game. He can pick up and help with blocks. Saquon's just a game changer for that Eagles offense.
I agree.
So, now time to go division standings. We're going to go 4-1. List off who we think back-to-back.
Giants.
Yep, Giants.
Commanders.
Same.
Cowboys
and Eagles.
Now here's the caveat there. If for some reason Dallas doesn't appease their superstars and they hold out for some games and the Commanders can put it together, you might see the Commanders flip with the Cowboys.
I don't think I could mentally handle what national media would do if that happened.
It would not be fun.
No, it would not. I've just felt like when I looked over these teams, I looked over the moves made in the offseason, the draft and everything, I just came away thinking the Eagles are the best team in this division by a decent margin. Cowboys are a good second-place team, and that's kind of where I feel comfortable putting them. The Commanders are a young up-and-coming team, and the Giants are working on the up-and-coming part.
I agree. I think the Giants are picking top 5.
Wouldn't shock me if they were picking top 1, to be completely honest. Now, before we wrap this up, and here's an interesting question with how low we are on the Giants, does Brian Dable get fired?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
No. Look, here's the thing. Everybody saw what he did with, they ran the table. They got lucky on injuries 2 years ago, and you can definitely see the talent. And look at what happened last year. I mean, I was actually surprised that they kept Kafka as their OC because he stripped him of play calling. But yeah, I think that he'll get another chance with another quarterback.
And that can very well be the case. My fear is New York media, they tend to run people out of town. And I think we talked a lot about this division. We talked about a lot of positives. We talked about a lot of negatives. Up next will be the AFC East, in which there is a certain team I have some choice words for. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Check out the South Division previews. Those were really fun to talk about. And look forward, if you have a team upcoming, be excited. I'm a Steeler fan. I'm excited to talk about the AFC North. He's a Seahawks fan. He's excited to talk about the NFC West. Football's back on Thursday. Have a great day, everyone.
Peace.